Part 1. Youth Vacation. And the person standing outside the balcony door at 2 a.m. I'm not the type of person who likes to join the crowd. Big parties, loud music, people screaming intoxicated, all of this was never something I actively sought out. I'm a student at a small coastal UC in California. Quiet and not as famous as UCLA, Berkeley or Santa Barbara. During my 4 years in college, I lived a fairly private life. I studied well, kept good enough relationships, and never once set foot on the crazy festivals that UC students often talked about. But then the final year comes. The feeling of being caught between the end and the beginning makes me start to think back about the things I haven't done. And in an impulsive moment that I didn't realize was the turning point, I nodded. The person who invited me was Troy, one of my rare close friends since freshman year. He is the type of person who lives life to the fullest. Not afraid of adventure. The festival Troy mentioned was Deltopia, an unofficial but legendary event at UCSB, where the entire town of Isla Vista turned into a sea of people for 48 hours. Thousands of students from all over come here, not to study or plan their future, but simply to live their lives to the fullest before growing up. Just this once, Troy said with a smile as he handed me a bottle of water. The only thing I was confident enough to hold at parties. You've graduated, why don't you do something unusual for once? I don't know why I nodded that day. Maybe because I suddenly realized I would never have this time again, the age of 22. The feeling of someone who is not quite an adult but is no longer a child. Maybe because I don't want to look back later and regret living too safely. So we set off. 4 people. Me, Troy, Leo and Marcus. They were all taller than me. And Troy's car was too small for 4 big men. I sat in the back, shoulder to shoulder with Marcus, while Leo and Troy talked endlessly in the front seat. The trip lasted more than 2.5 hours. Along the highway, the sound of 2000s music mixed with the laughter of my friends made me temporarily forget my anxiety. Sometimes I look out the window and see low, winding mountains and dry fields basking in the afternoon sun. I didn't say much, but I felt a strange feeling in my heart, as if I was coming to a crossroads in my life. When arriving at Isla Vista, everything was as rumored. Traffic is crowded, roads are congested, bass echoes from houses close together. Finding a parking space is like looking for treasure. We circled at least 5 neighborhoods without results. Just when the group was starting to think about giving up, Troy, with his gifted speaking talent, did something no one expected. He started a conversation with a girl sitting in front of a sorority house. After just a few sentences, she nodded and agreed to let us park in her spot. A parking spot with a sign clearly stating, "For members only." We all looked at each other and burst out laughing. I remember Marcus joking that Troy should change his major to street diplomacy. The place we stayed was Troy's older sister's apartment, named Brielle, a third-year student at UCSB. Brielle and her 3 roommates are all very approachable. When we put our sleeping bags on the wooden floor and spread some old blankets on the living room floor, no one complained. On the contrary, there was a dull excitement in the air, as if the whole of Isla Vista was waiting for a storm of youth to come. That evening, even though Deltopia hadn't officially begun, the whole apartment was already bustling with music, lights flashing from the balcony, and cold beer cans clinking against each other amid chants. I still didn't drink much, just held a glass of soda and stood next to the wall observing. But I also smiled, nodded, and felt like I was part of that group, for the first time. I wasn't the one standing on the sidelines. Little did I know that this would be one of the most memorable weekends of my life. Not because of the music or the partying, but because from the moment I agreed to get on the bus to go to UCSB, a series of strange, scary, and almost haunting events would begin, all stemming from a seemingly simple decision. But that's the next part. And at this moment, when the streetlights dappled on my friends' faces, when the whole Isla Vista seemed to be laughing because of youth, I thought, maybe I was right when I nodded. If you find yourself in this story, the person who lived quietly, the person who hesitated, the person who wanted to do something crazy once, remember that sometimes it is a sudden decision that opens up the unexpected. Don't forget like, share and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel to continue supporting the journey of characters like me. Thank you for listening. I think There is one thing that people will never fully feel if they only look at Deltopia through short videos or online news, that is air. That atmosphere doesn't just come from the EDM music blaring from 5 houses at once, or the smell of sweat and beer rising from overcrowded balconies, but something else, chaotic but orderly, crazy but unified, as if all of Isla Vista had agreed to remove every barrier, every rule, for just 2 days of the year. We arrived there just before sunset. Burnt orange light covers the facades of 2-story houses close together. Students sat, and screamed on the roof, on the stairs, and even on trash cans placed upside down as makeshift chairs. A boy ran past me in a bathrobe and a bicycle helmet, holding a bottle of vodka, howling like a wolf as he ran. No one reacted. I remember just standing there watching, confused and amused. Hey, Marcus patted my shoulder. I don't know if I should call this heaven or hell. I laughed, not knowing whether to agree or disagree. Maybe it's both. But in the midst of that chaos, there is a place we call safe. That was Brielle's apartment, Troy's older sister, where we were allowed to sleep, rest, and secretly hope everything would happen outside. Can't follow us in. The apartment is located on the 2nd floor of a slightly old building, but clean and well lit. Just by stepping through the door, you can feel one very simple thing. This place has it human. There is activity. There is the smell of instant noodles mixed with scented candles. There is laughter coming from the kitchen, not a short-term rental apartment, but a real home. Brielle is a lovely girl, the type who can balance studying well and drinking beer without spilling a drop. She and her 3 roommates, Riley, Sophia and Kim, were all friendly, willing to make room for all 4 boys to lie close to the living room floor, next to piles of backpacks, sleeping bags and cans of energy drinks. I still remember the way Brielle looked at us with a mixture of pity and a smile. You guys know Deltopia doesn't have a sleeping rule, right? That evening, as remixes blared from the Bluetooth speaker placed in the middle of the living room, we opened the first can. I chose water, as always, and introduced ourselves to the girls one by one. Sophia laughed when Marcus tried to pronounce her name with a Spanish accent. Kim told the story of once being punished for hanging disco lights in the classroom toilet. I didn't say much, just sat against the wall and laughed along. But there's a part of me that's starting to feel really present. Something I have never felt in large gatherings before. Until then, everything was going like a true youthful adventure, a bit impulsive, a bit chaotic, but harmless. We thought things would stay that way. But then the apartment door opened, and the first gust of strangeness has swept in. I won't spoil the rest, at least not yet. But let me put it this way, if the first part of the story is a youth comedy, the next part is a tense drama where you're not sure who is your friend and who is the stalker. That night, that apartment, the place I thought was my refuge, started to change. There were small signs at first, the unanswered knock on the door, the slightly strange looks from the stranger down the street, and the unusually long silence after each ring. I knew something wasn't right. But I couldn't believe it. How right was I? And if you've ever thought that college parties are a safe place to forget about life, let me tell you about Amir, and that seemingly harmless night almost changed my life. If you're still listening, thank you. My story has just begun. And what happened after that night was something I never wanted to experience again. But I must mention, because who knows what it could be. Word warn someone out there. Let's like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel if you want to hear the next part of the story, where the line between youth and fear becomes thinner than ever. Thank you for listening. We will meet again in the next section. After 0 Hours. I still remember the moment Amir appeared as clearly as if it had happened yesterday. It was almost 8 p.m. We had just walked out of the liquor store, carrying large paper bags crunching in our hands, the light smell of alcohol wafting in the warm, humid sea breeze of Isla Vista. I thought the craziest part of tonight would be trying to open a bottle of wine with noodle chopsticks. But then we saw him. Amir, standing there, right on the sidewalk, hands in the pockets of his ash-colored hoodie, head tilted slightly as if trying to figure out if anyone would call his name first. No one said anything. The whole group, me, Troy, Marcus, Leo, all of them stopped for a second, as if our brains needed more time to confirm that what we were seeing was real. Amir is not my friend. Not really friends with anyone in the group. He's the type of person who appears and doesn't disappear. You know that type of person? The person that no one invites, but is always present. The person you don't know why has your phone number, but he texts you at any time. The guy you saw burst into tears at a party because he felt left out, then immediately yelled at you because you didn't pour him a beer. I know you're probably thinking I'm too judgmental, but please understand this. Amir once hurt a close friend of mine. A year ago, during a group meeting, my friend Maya shared about the anxiety and isolation she experienced at school. We all listened quietly, except for Amir, who interrupted by talking about how I felt much worse. 2. He turns a moment of Maya's vulnerability and honesty into an opportunity to draw attention to himself. Then he mocked her behind her back. Maya cried. I can't forget that. So yeah, when Amir showed up that night, my first feeling wasn't surprise. It was risk. He walked in line with us as if nothing had happened. The way to butt into the conversation and not let anyone say, no. I still remember the first words he said. Why do you guys look so surprised? Did you think I wasn't coming? I grit my teeth, trying to stay calm. No, Amir, we unbelievable. We hope. The whole way back to the apartment, he talked endlessly as if he were leading the reunion, not realizing, or intentionally not realizing, that none of us answered. I slowed down, falling behind the group, hoping to create a gap. A feeling of frustration and anxiety arose in my heart, as if someone had just poured cold water down my neck in the middle of a summer night. Once at the apartment, things only got worse. Troy, who is nicer than anyone I've ever met, still nodded to allow Amir to use the bathroom when he accidentally mentioned it. But as soon as Troy said the word, okay, Amir raced up the stairs, ahead of the homeowner. When Brielle opened the door, Amir looked at her as if he already knew. I'm here, he said calmly, then entered the house blatantly, ignoring her bewildered eyes. That moment was like someone opening the door to let a poisonous wind into the already cozy house. Troy realized what was going on only a few minutes later, when Brielle asked softly, is this guy your friend? What's his name? I've never seen Troy that angry. His breathing was rapid, his hands clenched so tightly that his joints turned white. He quickly walked into the living room, standing between Amir and the group of girls who were struggling to prepare drinks. You can't stay here, Amir, Troy said, his voice so serious that the room became quiet as if all the sounds from the street had died out. I don't know where you got the information from, but lying to my sister to get into the house is unacceptable. Amir burst out laughing, as if Troy were telling a joke. Come on, he said, everyone is chilling. But no one laughed. In the end, Amir had to back down. But he didn't leave immediately. He stood near the door 20 minutes, trying to argue, beg, repeating things like, it's just one night, or, I don't have another place. I almost felt sorry for him, an emotion I didn't expect to emerge. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I suddenly realized, Amir is really lonely. The way he tried to hold on to broken relationships, the way he used fake confidence to hide his despair, it all came out like a crack that couldn't be hidden. But pity is not the same as trust. And I know, that moment, this is not over yet. Thank you for accompanying me here. But please don't leave too soon. This story has only just begun. And what Amir did next made one thing clear to our entire group. Sometimes the line between inconvenience and real danger is just a step apart. If you find yourself in this story, someone who has been forced to share space with someone you don't trust, then stay. Like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel to listen to the next part. Because what was about to happen, none of us could have expected it. I don't remember who spoke first after Amir finally walked out of the apartment. Probably Riley, one of Brielle's roommates. She stood next to the dining table, holding a glass of water with both hands as if trying to keep herself warm even though the room was not cold at all. She whispered, "Who is that? How did he get in?" No one answered immediately. Not because we don't want to, but because all of us, both the group of 4 and the girls living in the apartment, are immersed in the same feeling, confused and out of control. Just 10 minutes ago, this place was full of laughter, warm yellow lights, and melodious music, but with just one lie. Amir turned it into a place where everyone felt strange. I stood near the main door, my heart still beating fast, observing Troy's face. I've never seen him like that, no screaming, no cursing, but the look in his eyes as if he could broke the window glass just by looking. The way Amir infiltrated this place was not a misunderstanding. It is tactics. We didn't tell him the apartment address. No one. And as Troy later discovered, he got the information from share iPhone location, something Troy accidentally turned on at a group gathering a few weeks ago and forgot to turn it off. Amir had been following us since we left the liquor store. He didn't meet by chance, like he said. He did monitor, quietly and stubbornly, like a wolf waiting for an opportunity. And that opportunity came when Troy, in a carefree moment, still believing in the good in people, said 2 words, "Okay." I went back to the moment when Brielle opened the door. Amir did not ask him declare, "I'm here," a short sentence, but filled with complacency. He walked across the threshold as if he had the right, as if everything here belonged to him. And the worst thing? It's effective. Brielle, completely clueless, just frowned slightly and nodded politely. She didn't know that he wasn't invited. Little did she know that at that moment, a safe circle was broken from the inside. When Troy found out about it, the room went silent as if all the air had been sucked out. "Have I told you yet?" Troy stepped forward, standing between Amir and the group of girls. His voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. "You don't belong to this group. And you lying is not allowed to come in here." Amir, still smiling and trying to stay calm, raised his hands as if to say, "Calm down. It's not serious. You lied to my sister." Troy continued, not backing down. "You followed us all the way here. You're not a friend. You're a threat." The air in the room seemed to freeze. One of the girls, Sophia, quietly retreated into the room, locking the door. "I don't blame her." Amir laughed dryly, looking around, hoping to find sympathetic eyes. But no one looked at him. Then he stepped back, slowly, as if considering his next move. But he didn't leave immediately. As the door closed behind him, I thought, "It's over," but I was too naive. He stood there, outside the door, for nearly 20 minutes. At first he knocked on the door. Then he pleaded, then gradually turned angry, banged his hands on the wooden frame, and shouted things no one wanted to hear. I stood inside, my hand clutching the phone. Marcus held onto one of the wine bottles, just in case the worst happened. Leo sat on the carpet, his back against the wall, his eyes never leaving the shadow of a person behind the frosted glass of the main door. Brielle called security, but they said they could only intervene if he re-entered or caused violence. He knows that. Him take advantage of loopholes. He is like someone who is accustomed to circumventing the limits of law and belief. Finally, he also left, but no one in that apartment felt as safe as before. "We lock all the doors." Troy immediately turned off location sharing on his phone. I remember Marcus sitting down next to me, quietly saying, "It feels like we've been followed by an animal, but none of us are armed." I nodded, said nothing. I have only one thought in my heart. Amir doesn't give up easily. And I was right. If you've ever been hurt by someone's invasion of personal space shamelessly, if you have ever felt a vague fear spreading in the room that you believe is the safest place, then you understand me. This is no longer a carnival story. This is the story about boundary is penetrated, and the price when you're too confident that everyone is harmless. Thank you for listening this far. But don't leave yet. Story, it's not over yet. Let's like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel if you want to know what happens when the rejected person returns, with unexpected intentions. I don't remember who was the first to say it out loud, but I'm sure I was the last to understand the truth. It was the next afternoon, Deltopia's official day. The group had just returned to the apartment after a chaotic, sunburned, and literally ridiculous day. We wandered around Isla Vista, drinking just enough to be happy but not so much that we forgot who we were. I remember Riley wearing a t-shirt that said, "Let's make questionable decisions," and Leo walking around all day with goggles on his head as if he were about to jump into the ocean at any moment. When we got back to the apartment, we didn't think about Amir anymore. Really, he is like a passing storm, scary, worth talking about, but has passed and disappeared. The whole group seemed to have returned to the correct trajectory of a student's final vacation, lighthearted, lazy and carefree, until Ryland arrived. Ryland is Troy's old classmate, tall, quiet, and always looking a bit as if he's observing more than participating. He arrived with 4 other people, and after a few jokes about crazy things on the street, Troy pulled Ryland into a corner to tell him about Amir from yesterday. I was standing at the dining table, finishing my cold pizza, when I heard Ryland exclaim, "Wait, I think I still have his position." The whole group turned their heads simultaneously like in a movie. No one jokes. No one laughs. A silence rippled like a stoned water surface. Ryland opened his phone, swiped a few times, then stopped. The expression on his face changed from curiosity to shock. He showed us the screen. Blue dot, Amir's iPhone location symbol, located right in the middle of the map. Just a few meters from the apartment where we were standing. "No way," someone said. "I'm not sure who it is. Maybe it's me." As soon as Ryland touched the map to zoom in, the dot began move, but not in a pedestrian way. It's the type of movement fast, with long, steady intervals, as if he were sit in the car, and the car is running leave. We froze for a few seconds. The terrible truth that no one dares to utter but everyone implicitly understands. Amir was nearby. Maybe he was just standing on the balcony. Maybe he parked right at the back of the parking lot. Maybe he was looking at us through the curtain. And now he is retreating. My heart was beating so hard that it hurt in my chest. Leo sat down in his chair. He was following us. No one laughed. No one asked, "What's going on?" Because obviously something happened. Troy pulled out his phone immediately. "We have to stop him," he said. "I thought I turned it off." I followed. Ryland tried sending a message to Amir. But just a few seconds later, the screen displayed the familiar words. "Message not delivered." We try each in turn. This person, then that person. All are blocked. None of us can contact him anymore. A feeling of helplessness spread like fog in the room. No one spoke, but in my head, an image kept repeating. Amir stood outside the window last night, looking in, his hand on the wall like an abandoned person. Or someone making plans. The feeling of being observed, even just a possibility, is enough to keep people up at night. But the feeling of being observed by an old friend who is unstable, no longer rational, and used to lie to get into your house, that turns the feeling of insecurity into real fear. That night, when everyone gradually dispersed to the corners of the apartment to rest, I couldn't sleep. I lay against the wall, in my sleeping bag, eyes wide open at the ceiling, ears straining as if I were hearing footsteps that didn't exist. Troy slept next to him, occasionally turning around, causing the carpet beneath him to hiss. But it wasn't the sound I was worried about. I think of the balcony scene. I think about the door. Is the lock turned? I thought about the shadow that might be quietly out there, standing still, waiting for the right moment. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just afraid of what would happen to me. I'm afraid of things him will do with my friend, with those girls, with Brielle. Because now I know, Amir was never simply a nuisance. He is a storm, and we have only just felt the first wind. If you've ever had someone you can't call a friend, but can't completely dismiss them. If you've ever felt someone's eyes following you without being able to prove it. If you understand the feeling of having someone who knows your every move, knows where you are, who you're with, and doesn't need to be invited to appear, then you are understanding me. And believe me, you want to know what happens next. Let's like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel if you want to hear the next part of the story. Because just a few hours after that follow-up, everything changed completely. I woke up at nearly 2 a.m., not by anyone calling me, but by a very strange, vague feeling, a type of uneasiness that cannot be named, as if someone had interrupted the dream just now. I lay motionless for a few seconds, eyes wide open, looking at the dark living room ceiling. Troy lay just an arm's length away from me, and Marcus and Leo slept near the foot of the table, each wrapped in their own blankets. Everyone was asleep, exhausted after a long day. No one spoke up. There were no footsteps, no voice. But I know, something is not right. And then, I heard a sound: broken glass. Not big, but it was enough to make me jump up like a spring. That sharp echo came from the balcony, where there was a sliding glass door leading outside. I looked around, trying to see if anyone else was awake. No one moved. I stood up, my heart pounding, my legs shaking as if I was doing something beyond my ability. I had no weapons. I just saw an empty bottle of wine on the table. So I grabbed it and squeezed it tightly. Step by step, I entered the living room, my feet avoiding stepping on shopping bags and beer cans. When the streetlight outside the door shone in, I saw it. A large rock lies in the middle of the floor. surrounded by hundreds of sparkling pieces of broken glass. The balcony door was broken. I stood still, my breath caught in my throat. In that moment, I didn't need any more proof. I know, Amir is back. I turned around and was about to run to call Troy when suddenly, the nearby cabinet door handle vibrated. It was a very small movement, but in the quiet space, it was like a warning bell ringing in my head. I stood dumbfounded. If I had acted on instinct at that time, if I had opened the cupboard door, I don't dare to imagine what would have happened. Because just a few minutes later, when I woke Troy up and we both returned to the living room, the closet door was wide open, and inside, a kitchen knife nearly 12 inches long was left behind. We don't see Amir, but him was there, standing behind the door, and held a knife. I'm not shivering from the cold. I'm shaking because truth. He was waiting for me to open the door. And if I did, I probably wouldn't be here to tell the story. Troy took the knife. His eyes changed completely, from surprise to anger, then to fear for the other person. We woke everyone up. The apartment felt like a war zone after the enemy retreated, shards of glass, dusty footprints on the floor, and a long knife lying in the middle of the wooden cabinet. Brielle panicked. Riley cried. Sophia called the police immediately. But like many incidents on Deltopia, the police only made a report, took photos of the scene, and then withdrew. No one was injured, and no suspect was arrested on the spot. They said, "We will investigate, but we know Amir left. This time, maybe forever." The next morning, before getting on the bus to leave Isla Vista, the group stood in front of the apartment door, the sunlight shining through their faces that hadn't had enough sleep. No one said much, just a feeling of quiet gratitude, that we were alive, that no one was hurt, and that luck, however slim, was still on our side. Troy sent Amir a long text, not as an apology or warning, but as a way to end. But the message cannot be sent. We have been blocked. Amir disappeared completely after that. No one saw him again at school. No social media accounts. No news. There's only a chill left when thinking about it. That dangerous person once knew too much about us. Now, when telling this story, I am no longer afraid like before. I tell it not to spread confusion, but to warning. We often think of dangerous people as strangers, but many times, they are someone you once considered a friend. They quietly observe, pretend to belong, and when not acknowledged, they find a way intrusion at all costs. Be careful of those who make you unable to breathe in your own space. Trust your intuition, learn to say no, and if necessary, please protect yourself before it's too late. If you have heard this far, I would like to say a word, thank you. This story is not easy to tell, but I share it in the hope that you, or someone you care about, won't have to go through the same thing. If you have ever experienced a similar feeling, please comment below, share your story, don't keep it to yourself. We are stronger when we speak out. And don't forget to support me, and those who have made it through terrifying nights like this. Subscribe to the After 0 Hours channel to stay tuned for true stories. Reminders that this world is both lovely and dangerous. And sometimes, what saves your life, is simply that do not open the door. Part 2. The black SUV, and the answer that saved our lives. I don't think a simple outing could keep me alive. But that's true. In April 1996, the air in San Angelo, Texas was both hot and dry and stuffy. Like every other spring on the Air Force Base. My name is Mason. At that time, I was just 24 years old. Just a few months out of basic training and receiving my first assignment as a communications specialist in the Air Force. I'm a reserved person, not good at communicating, but fortunately, I found 2 close friends right from the first week. Connor, funny. Always finds a reason to laugh even in the middle of the longest shift. And Elise, a personable girl. A better driver than most of the soldiers in the team. That weekend, Elise invited us to go to Austin. It's not because there's anything special. She said, I'm just tired of the smell of gasoline and the radio noise on base. I need to see real people, people without uniforms. People playing guitar on the sidewalk. People sitting outside drinking coffee. We agreed immediately. To me, that trip was like a long breath after soaking in the water for so long. It was simple, no plans, no expectations, just a little getaway. And I thought it would pass by without anything significant. But that was before we hit the road. We left the base late on a Saturday afternoon. It was still light, but the sun was starting to cast long shadows on the highway. Elise took the wheel. As always, she really likes cars, not the type to show off engines, but someone who really knows how to take care of them. Knows how the car reacts when the road changes direction. Knows when to step on the gas and when to back off. Connor sat in the passenger seat, eating potato chips and singing along to the radio. I sat in the back seat, quietly, looking through the glass window. On the other side was a stretch of grassland. Wire fences and electric poles as straight as measured by a ruler. We talk about everything. About the night shifts. About the tough new officer who just transferred in. About the little things I would do if I had 24 more free hours. It's the type of conversation that's not too deep, but enough to feel like you're living and sharing. For me, that was more than enough. Until Connor spoke up. "Where did that SUV behind me come from?" he said. His voice still joking but slightly out of tune. I tilted my head to look. There was indeed a black SUV following us. It was unremarkable, no obvious signs. No flashing lights, no sirens. But when Elise changed lanes to pass a pickup truck in front, the SUV also changed lanes. "It's probably just a coincidence," Elise said, but I saw her hands tighten slightly on the steering wheel. A minute later, she tried again, this time changing lanes to the left and then quickly back to the right. The other SUV still followed closely. No one said anything anymore. Connor stopped chewing. I feel my heart beating faster than usual. Then, the flashing light turned on. The SUV blew its horn softly, signaling Elise to pull over. "It looks like the police," she said, her eyes never leaving the rearview mirror. We pulled over. The SUV parked a few meters behind us. A man stepped out, dressed head to toe in black, no name tags, no obvious badges. On the sleeve was a piece of fabric with something so small I couldn't read it. He didn't go right to the car door like the police usually do. He stood behind the car, looking in. "Don't step forward. Say nothing. Just standing and look." As if analyzing. License plate. Military decal on the back of the car. Trunk on the roof. Connor looked at me and asked softly, "Do you find this strange?" Then the man stepped up and lightly knocked on Elise's glass door. "Car papers," he said, his voice alarmingly normal. Elise showed her driver's license and registration. He took it and went back to his car. We wait. 1 minute, then 2, then 5. No return. I looked closer and realized there was 2 more people in that SUV. They just got out and stood at the back of the car, not doing anything. Not drawing guns, not talking, just standing there. Like shadows. I started to feel scared. A nameless fear, as if premonitioning everything not simple. Then the first person turned around. "Are you the child of someone in the army?" he asked Elise. Elise laughed lightly, but her voice stiffened. "No, I'm in the military. So are they." She pointed at me and Connor. The man was silent for a few seconds. I saw him glance at the 2 guys behind him. Then without saying a word, he returned the papers and turned away. The black SUV sped away, never looking back. We sat silently for the next few minutes. No one said anything. The trip continues, but none of us feel as light as before. If you're listening this far, thank you. Not every story ends with a shocking incident, but there are little moments like that, when a military decal saves your life. And you never look at the world the same way again. Let's like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel if you find this story can help someone out there be more cautious. Survive better, and dare to trust your own intuition. Don't miss the next part, because the worst might actually have happened just a week later. I still remember the chilling feeling down my spine when I first realized the black SUV was following us. At that time, we had only been out of San Angelo about an hour. The sky was starting to turn the pale orange of late afternoon. And the interstate was almost empty of other cars. Dry fields, a few low bushes, and towering electricity poles were all we saw along the way. Elise was driving. Connor was in the passenger seat. And I sat in the back, leaning my head against the window, feeling relieved to be able to escape the cramped atmosphere of the military base. Even if only temporarily. "Hey, that car just appeared, right?" Connor suddenly spoke up. I raised my head reflexively and looked in the rearview mirror. A large, black SUV with no lights on was following us about 50 feet behind us. It's nothing too strange, it's a highway, but it still makes me feel off-key. Elise frowned. I didn't see it before. It seemed like it parked on the sidewalk and then turned right after I passed it. It's probably just someone else's car, Connor said, trying to dispel the tension. But then, Elise steered the wheel to the left lane. The SUV also followed suit. I clearly heard the sound of its wheels grinding against the divider between the two lanes, not smoothly. As if the driver hesitated a bit, but still. Follow closely. Elise tried again. Back to the old lane. SUVs follow closely. We fell silent. At this point, all three understood that this was no longer a coincidence. The SUV kept the distance almost exactly, neither accelerating nor slowing down. Only silence followed, like a ghost. No flashing lights, no whistle, no police signs, but it was enough to make my chest tighten. I'll pull over and let it pass, Elise said. She drove into the emergency lane and slowly decelerated. The SUV slowed down at first, then decelerated accordingly. It doesn't pass. Don't move forward. Just slowly stop behind us. Close to. Are you kidding? Connor mumbled. I could hear gulps from both the front and back of the car. And then, the short siren rang out. A strip of flashing lights pops up behind the SUV's windshield. Not your typical police lights, no, police. No standard siren sounds, but enough to scare the average person. Believe it was an undercover police car. We have no reason to run away. And no weapons either. Elise had to park the car completely on the side of the road. I looked closely in the mirror, my hands shaking every now and then. A man stepped out of the SUV driver's seat. That was the moment I understood that feeling of real fear didn't come from screams or sudden attacks. Which comes from work, don't know. Don't know who that person is. Don't know what's going to happen. And I don't know if I will be allowed to survive. That guy was dressed in black from head to toe. Tactical jackets do not have obvious badges. On the sleeve was a small piece of silver cloth, but the writing on it was too faint to read. There is no gun strapped to the hip. No radio. Nothing. And him don't walk right up to the car door like real police. He stood behind the car, his eyes glued to the trunk and military decals behind the windows. He studied, as if he was trying to figure out who we were and what our values were. Is it dangerous? I stiffened. His hand rested on his pants pocket, where he kept his military ID. Elise? I called softly. I know, she replied. The other guy quietly walked to Elise's window and knocked lightly 3 times. Elise lowered her glasses. Vehicle records, documents, license. The voice has no accent, no emotion, as if reciting. Elise handed over the papers but said nothing more. He took them and returned to the SUV. Not a word. We wait. Near the 10 minutes. No radio. Don't look up. Nothing. Connor started whispering. Maybe he's not a cop. But, who? And then, without warning, 2 others stepped out of the SUV. They stood still at the back of the car, not speaking or moving, eyes looking towards us. My eyes were dry. My heart was beating like it was about to burst. None of us moved. My mind is spinning with questions. Is this the end of my life? When the first man turned back, he didn't look at us. Just asked one question. Your father was in the army? Elise pursed her lips. No, she replied. I'm a soldier. And so are the 2 of them. I can't describe it, the change in his face, but something has gone awry. He stopped. Turn your head to look at the 2 people behind you. Then quietly pulled the papers out of his pocket and returned them. Drive carefully. Just 1 sentence. Then he turned away. The 3 of them got into the car. The SUV started. Yes, rush away. No lights. No whistle. Nothing. We sat silently for the next 2 minutes. Then Elise burst into tears. No sound. Just tears falling onto the steering wheel. Connor squeezed her shoulder. I looked outside, into the distance that was turning into night. If you ever intuitively seize danger, if you ever know that something is wrong but no one dares to say it, you will understand the feeling we went through. And if you're listening, I need you to know something worse almost happened. And we are just a step away from it. Another answer. Let's like, comment, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel if you want to hear the next part, where the truth about those imposters is exposed. Thank you for listening to the end. Sometimes, a correct answer can save lives. When the black SUV came back, I hoped it was all because I was too sensitive. That the 3 people who came down were just police officers wearing special uniforms. That they were on duty and were about to explain everything. But every excuse I tried to build up in my head collapsed when they just stood there. Do not move towards the car. No loudspeaker calls. Do nothing. Just stand. Legs slightly open. Hands placed in front of the stomach as if guarding something invisible. The eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, not too bright in the middle of the afternoon, so I couldn't guess what they were looking at. But me feel clearly. Every inch of my skin is being examined. I saw Elise tighten her grip on the steering wheel. Her lips pursed, and I realized that she was also fighting fear. Connor, sitting next to me, leaned slightly towards me and whispered, "I'm not sure these are real cops." I nodded. That's it. No more words needed, because part of me knew before. Knew from the way they looked at our car as if they were valuing the item. Know from the way they don't act according to procedure, as I was trained to identify. I am a communication soldier. But during the training process, we still learn about the rules of behavior with law enforcement forces. Especially in case of being asked to stop a vehicle. I know the procedure. The real police don't quietly observe you for 10 minutes. Real police don't appear like ghosts in the middle of the highway. Then suddenly turn away when they know you're a soldier. I used to have a brother, his name was Jordan. He died 3 years ago in a highway accident. A reckless driving truck crashed into his car, killing him on the spot. Police reported that he died instantly and painlessly. But that doesn't comfort me. Jordan once taught me how to wear a seatbelt properly and how to use my left hand to hold the steering wheel when my right hand is tired. He was the one who taught me that intuition is not to be ignored. It is a survival instinct. I couldn't have imagined that. 3 years later, his advice would echo in my head as I looked into the eyes of 3 men with no names. No identification numbers. And no clear reason for being there. Elise opened her mouth to say something. But at that moment, the first man, the one who had been holding our papers, turned around. He walked up to the car door without a word of warning. I saw sweat trickling down Elise's temples. Connor tightened his grip on the chair arm. "Whose child are you in the army?" he asked. The question was so strange that Elise burst out laughing, not out of joy, but because amazing. "No one," she replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. "I'm in the military. And so are they." I have never seen such heavy silence. He stopped. I saw him turn his head and glance at the other 2 people, as if waiting for instructions. Then without saying anything more, he pulled the documents from his coat pocket and returned them to Elise. "Drive carefully," he said, his voice dry. And that's it. The 3 people turned around and got into the car. The SUV started, then turned off the curb and disappeared into the main road as if it had never appeared. We sat there, no one daring to restart the car for at least 3 minutes. I heard Connor gasp, as if he had just fallen out of water. Elise bowed her head, her hands still on the steering wheel, but her whole body seemed to be trembling slightly. I looked out the window. It was starting to get dark. And I know, we had just survived something evil that none of us 3 dared to name. If you have ever met someone who made you feel unsafe, if you have ever been in a situation where intuition screams inside you, and you are forced to believe it, then you understand. You understand the unspoken fear. You understand the eyes with unclear intentions. You understand that there are things that don't require a gun to pose a real danger. And if you're listening this far, I need you to know this. We were very lucky. Just Elise answered differently. Just we hesitate. Perhaps, we are no longer sitting here to tell the story. The story is not over yet. A week later, we'll turn on the news and find out the truth shudders behind that SUV. Let's like, share, and comment if you have ever experienced a moment when your intuition saved you. And don't forget subscribe to After 0 Hours channel, where we tell stories that seem normal until they aren't. There are moments in life when you cannot foresee the value of a little thing until it saved your life. I still clearly remember the moment the man in black, who walked up to Elise's car window, asked an unexpected question. "Your father was in the army?" Elise tilted her head, frowning slightly. "No," she replied, her voice cautious. "I'm in the military. And so are they." She nodded slightly towards me and Connor. I can't say for sure what happened in that moment, just that the whole atmosphere around changed. The man paused. His eyes were no longer searching like before, but turned into a sudden defense. Just like him made a mistake and now planning to withdraw. He said nothing more, just quietly turned around, pulled out Elise's driver's license from his pocket, something he had kept for more than 10 minutes without doing anything with it, and gave it back to her. "Drive carefully," he said, his voice as dry as paper. Then he turned away. The remaining two men, still standing behind the SUV, also backed away. No one said anything. They got into the car. The doors closed simultaneously, and then the black SUV sped away, leaving a column of dust mixed into the fading sunset on the Texas highway. Elise didn't start the car right away. She still sat still, both hands holding the steering wheel, her eyes never leaving the road in front of her. Connor broke the silence first. "What the hell just happened?" "I can't answer. I just know, we're alive." Elise raised her hand to caress her face, and I clearly saw two silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Not out of fear, but because shock after a situation that we all knew could have ended differently. A much more terrible way. "That decal," I said, my voice as quiet as the wind, "is a military decal on the back of the car." Both turned to look at me. "I think it's what changed his attitude," I continued. "He didn't expect us to be soldiers. They thought we were just three kids on the street, with no one to protect us. No one who would notice if we went missing. I don't dare say the word death, but all three of us are thinking about it. That decal, a thin triangular piece of plastic with words U.S. Air Force that Elise stuck on her car's rear window from the moment she received her first assignment, was teased as showing off. A superior officer once told Elise to take it down when leaving the base to avoid attracting attention. But she held back, not because of expression, but because for her, it is a reminder. I have done this. I have passed. I have value. And now, it may have caused those three strangers walk away instead of taking action. After calming down, we continued our journey to Austin. No one slept. No one turned on music. We just sat in the car, eyes facing the road ahead, each of us gnawing on a very personal truth. Sometimes lives are saved by things no one thought would matter. That night in Austin, we didn't do anything major. No parties, no bars, no noise. We just found a quiet late-night diner next to Town Lake. Ordered 3 tacos, and shared a few stories about our loved ones, people we would never want to say goodbye to. I told Elise and Connor about my late brother, Jordan, who once taught me how to feel when something isn't right. Someone once said, "If you feel scared and don't know why, you should stop." That instinct is survival. Connor said his mother worked as a nurse during the Gulf War, and she taught him that silence can be more dangerous than shouting. He said, when those 3 people stood still in the back of the car, I heard that silence, and I never wanted to scream so loudly. Elise didn't say much. She only said one sentence, "I thought we were going to die today." And I don't know why they changed their decision. We don't have the exact answer. But that doesn't matter anymore. If you are listening to this, please take a minute to think. Have you ever ignored your own intuition? Have you ever thought, a small, insignificant detail, a decal, an introduction, a piece of paper, will never be useful? Remember, sometimes it's what you don't think about that will be the only barrier between you and disaster. And if you've ever survived a situation that made you question life again, please share. You are not alone. Let's comment, like, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel to continue listening to true stories, memories that seem to have fallen asleep but are still reminding us every day. Intuition is a whisper. Never be silent when it speaks. About a week after our trip to Austin, Connor and I were sitting in the camp common room, in our usual spot on the frayed blue sofa. On the table was an open bag of potato chips, and the TV was showing local news, like an innocuous habit we did after every training session. I don't really pay attention. The afternoon news is often filled with boring stories, minor traffic accidents, local festivals, or public health campaigns. But then the host lowered his voice a semitone, a tone I learned long ago that often accompanies bad news. Police just discovered 2 bodies, one male, one female, abandoned in a ditch along the highway near San Angelo. He said, his eyes serious behind his glasses. The scene showed that this was a targeted killing, and the SUV discovered nearby was confirmed to have been stolen 2 months ago in Louisiana. Connor sat up straight immediately. I turned to look at him, and he looked at me. No one said it, but in that look, we both knew. This cannot be a coincidence. Elise entered the room a few minutes later, holding a bottle of water. She saw the look on our faces and immediately asked, "What is it?" We pointed at the screen. The news is still showing images of the scene. Police tape wrapped around a bush area. Next to a black SUV with an obscured license plate. But for us, there is no need to see clearly, that's the car. The car used to follow us. The car stopped us. The car that 3 men got out of. Just to ask one question about their father in the army, before retreating. I felt cold down my spine. Elise sat down on the chair without saying a word. Connor whispered, "If I hadn't had that decal that day." The sentence hangs in the air. No one wants to complete it. Unnecessary. We know. If Elise didn't answer like that day. If she had simply said, no. If we were 3 students. 3 ordinary people, not part of the military. With no reason to be respected. We might have been lying in that ditch. During the following days, all 3 of us silently recorded every detail we could remember. We went to the police and told the whole story, from being followed, being stopped, to the unusual behavior of the 3 men. They recorded the testimony, but because there were no clear license plates or images from cameras, the possibility of tracing was very low. However, for us, the truth does not need verification. We were lucky to survive an encounter with a killer. This has changed me. I started paying more attention to my intuition, the initial feeling that we often dismiss for fear of being considered skeptical. I listen to it, memorize it, and most importantly, I believe it. Elise, who was always confident that she could handle any situation on the road, has now removed the decal from her car. Not because she was embarrassed, but because she understood that expressing identity in public also requires limits and caution. Connor started reading books about criminal psychology. It may sound strange, but he said, "I want to know what makes a person go to the extent of harming others. Maybe understanding them helps us know how to avoid them." What about me? I write this story, not to create drama, not to get attention, but because I believe there is someone out there who needs to hear this. It could be you, maybe someone you will meet in your life. Sometimes, a seemingly simple answer can save your life. Sometimes, a small action, like not rolling down the window too soon, like responding with caution, can make a difference in the outcome. And sometimes, the only thing standing between you and a tragic outcome is lucky. But I don't want you to rely on luck. I want you to be alert, conscious, and have the courage to say no when you feel unsafe. If you have ever experienced a situation that makes you cringe when you remember it, please share it in the section comment. Your story could be a lesson for others. If you sympathize with what I share, please click prefer, not just to support me, but so that more people can see this story. And if you want to hear more stories, real memories buried under silence, please subscribe to After 0 Hours channel. Because here, we don't just recount what happened after midnight, we recount the moments change your life forever. Thank you for listening. We are still here, and that is no coincidence. Part 3. My identity was stolen, and I found myself by tracking the imposter. My name is Brandon, and if you've ever thought that only careless people fall victim to fraud, then I need you to hear this story. About 10 years ago, I drove alone from West Patterson, New Jersey to Fort Worth, Texas. At that time, I was about 30 years old, worked freelance in the technology field, lived quite privately and rarely shared my personal life with anyone. The reason for the trip was to visit my parents. They had moved to Texas after retiring, and I had delayed returning for too long. I clearly remember it was a clear day. Late spring. I set off early. The old Honda Accord ran smoothly. My luggage was neatly in the back trunk. I chose the route through the south because I wanted to see the countryside and avoid crowded cities. At first, everything was pleasant, the breeze was cool. The radio played old music from the 90s. And I was quietly enjoying my rare time free from work. Until the car started showing strange signs. At first it was just a slight noise under the bonnet. After that, the temperature gauge jumped. The engine jerked as if it was choked. I slowed down and looked around. There were no stops. No shops. Just endless grasslands and an empty stretch of road. I pulled over, turned off the engine, opened the hood and looked down, not understanding anything. I'm not the type of person who knows how to fix cars. Staring at the machine does not cause it to heal itself. But standing still wouldn't help. So I pretended to check for a while, thinking in my heart that I would call AAA in 5 minutes. even though I knew the extra fees might make me crazy. That's when a white pickup truck slowly stopped behind me. I remember feeling strange from the beginning. The car had no front license plate. The front was slightly dented, and the engine roared like the car was about to break down even more than my car. A man stepped out from the driver's seat, about 35 to 40 years old. Curly hair, long shaggy beard as if he hadn't shaved in several months. Old shirt, hands with oil stains. The appearance wasn't anything special, but it also didn't immediately make me suspicious. He came closer, his eyes squinted against the sunlight, then said a very natural sentence. "Is there something wrong with the car?" I nodded, but he didn't wait for me to explain. He bent down and started looking at the machine as if he knew what he was doing. Hand touches here a little, presses there a little, nods and then stands up straight after a few minutes. "It must be the air compression system," he said. "If you want to know exactly, you must have a pressure gauge. I have a friend nearby, also a worker, who can probably bring that over." I nodded, glad that someone was helping, even though I was still a bit skeptical. When he took out his phone to call his friend, he stopped, shook his head and sighed. "Damn. The battery is out. Can you lend me your phone to make a quick call?" I don't think too much. Perhaps because of the hot weather. I was both annoyed that the car broke down and at the same time grateful to the person who stopped to help me. So I took out my phone, unlocked it, and gave it to him. He took it with his left hand. His right hand pulled out from his pocket a handgun. I was dumbfounded. Every movement in my head felt disconnected. My eyes were glued to the barrel of the gun. And he lowered his voice, monotonously. "Sit down on the side of the road. Don't scream. Don't do anything stupid." I followed. I sat down on the grass, my hands on my knees, looking straight at my old car, the car I once believed was good enough for a long journey. He searched my body, took my wallet, backpack, and phone, then asked me to read the passcode and confirm whether my account information was saved anywhere. I miss the feeling more humiliated than scared. Stripped of everything, not just belongings, but control. When he got in the car and drove away, without once turning back, I just sat there, motionless. No one else passed by for nearly 20 minutes. Then an older man stopped the car and helped me call a tow service. He didn't ask too many questions. You can see I'm still shaking. My face is stiff. I thanked him in a choked voice. That evening, I still made it back to Fort Worth. Seeing my parents again after a long separation made me feel like a child who had just escaped a nightmare, just wanting to hug them and forget everything that had happened. I couldn't believe that the nightmare has only just begun. If you're listening here, I just hope you remember one thing. Help does not always come from kindness. Never give your phone to a stranger. Never ignore the initial feeling of insecurity. And if you're on the road alone, always prepare for the worst. I'm Brandon. My story continues. And what happened after this robbery destroyed me more than that gun. Let's like, share, and comment if you have ever experienced a similar moment. And subscribe to After 0 Hours channel to listen to the next part, where I tell about that bandit become me, and almost made me disappear from my own life. I don't think I can forget that feeling. The feeling of seeing that man, the one I trusted just a few seconds ago, pull out a gun from his pocket. Gently as if he was taking out a pen. An act of mastery. No rush, no panic, no threats, just a procedure he had performed many times. His hand was raised, the barrel of the gun pointed at me. And in that moment, I understood, there was no more pretense here. He has never been a good person who stops because of compassion. He is one predator, and I accidentally stood right in the crosshairs. "Sit down, don't shout, don't act stupid," he said. His voice is not loud, not harsh. But it was that calmness that sent chills down my spine. Not the type to commit a rash crime. It's the type accustomed to being in control. I sat down on the roadside as if hypnotized. My legs were numb. The breeze blew across my face. But I felt it again hot. Suffocating. He took my phone, turned on the camera, scanned my face for authentication, then forced me to read the passcode. I followed. At that time, I had no other concept in my mind other than a single goal: survive. I gave the PIN, identified the banking apps, the folder where the documents were stored, and even the location of the linked credit card. Every part of my life, what I once carefully kept in my hands, now belongs to him. He rummaged through his backpack, took out his wallet, and pulled out each note and note. Bank cards, IDs, insurance cards, credit cards, all disappeared in the pockets of his baggy jacket. Then he walked to my car door, opened the passenger seat, and made a final check as if he were completing a shopping list. I can't say anything. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt as heavy as stone. I wanted to scream, wanted to stand up and snatch the phone back, wanted to ask why, but nothing can be done. I'm just a lonely person in an area where no one can hear my cries for help. He looked at me one last time before getting into his car, an old pickup truck. No license plate. The interior was full of cracks. "It's not your fault," he said, then laughed. "It's just, you trust people too easily." The car rolled, dust flying. I sat back, watching him walk away, my hand still in its original position as if I had never existed. I don't know how long I sat there. The wind blew. The sky gradually darkened. Another car passed by but did not stop. It wasn't until nearly half an hour later that a middle-aged man, riding an SUV, stopped and got out to ask if he needed help. I stammered, and he did not hesitate. "Call for help, lend me some water, and stay until assistance arrives." I don't know his name. I also don't remember his face clearly. But he is the reason I still believe that this world is not completely cruel. That night, I reached Fort Worth by rickshaw. Physically and mentally exhausted, my mother opened the door, hugged me without asking why I suddenly became silent, confused and didn't eat anything. I slept for 12 hours straight. But in my dreams, I still saw myself sitting on the side of the road, looking at the person who took everything away. The next morning, I realized I lost more than I thought. It's not just money, not just paperwork, not just a phone, which is ownership of oneself. If you're listening to this story, stop for a moment. I know, many people will say that I'm stupid, that I shouldn't trust strangers, that who would give a phone to someone they don't know? I get it. I also used to think so. Until I became human sitting alone in the middle of the highway, with a gun less than a meter from his face. Trust me, you don't know how you'll react until you're there. When someone holds a gun, every principle you ever had crumbles in a second. You are no longer tough, smart or wise. You just are people want to live another day. But the bad things haven't stopped. A few weeks later, I would receive strange letters. My name was used to open a credit card. Someone is using my identity. There's someone become me, and caused me to lose control of my life. I'll talk about that later. For now, if you take anything away from this section, I hope it is, never underestimate a normal situation. The person who stops the car for you might be an angel, or maybe someone who has done it dozens of times before. You don't know, but you know intuitively. Listen to it. If this story makes you think, please like, comment, and share it with someone you believe needs to hear this. And don't forget subscribe to After 0 Hours channel, where we recount memories that survive after midnight. I'm Brandon, and I'm still here to tell the story. But not everyone is as lucky as me. I thought that roadside robbery that day was the worst thing that had ever happened in my life. But it turns out, it's just a warm-up for a string of disasters that lasted nearly a year. About 3 weeks after returning to Fort Worth, I was trying to get my life back together, redoing paperwork, canceling bank cards, buying a new phone, changing passwords on each account. This work takes hours, day after day, but I thought, at least it's over. I'm over it. Then one Monday morning, I received a strange letter from a bank in Tennessee that I had never heard of. In the letter, they welcomed me for opening a credit account with them, and said the new card would be sent within a few days. I stared at that letter for almost 10 minutes. At first I thought it was spam. But then I see my correct name, correct address, correct social security number, printed faintly below the contract copy. The feeling at that time was not necessarily fear, but rather crumble. Because I know that robber didn't just take the wallet, the phone, or the money. He took me too. I immediately checked my credit file. Had to wait nearly an hour to get the OTP code because the new SIM card was not completely synchronized. But when I finally logged in, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. 3 new credit accounts have been opened in my name, all within the last 2 weeks. One in Tennessee, one in Alabama, one in Mississippi. Total outstanding debt, more than $3.200. I've never been to those places. But my name is everywhere. And worse, it's shopping, spending money, signing contracts, getting loans. I immediately called the banks. filed fraud reports, and froze credit on the 3 major companies. I filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, and went to the local police station to file a report. They recorded and printed the records, but were frank. No suspects. No license plates. No cameras. The investigation will be very difficult. I nodded. I get it, but still angry. I feel angry at myself for trusting people. Angry at the world for allowing such a thing to happen. And the angriest is me. There was nothing I could do to stop that person from continuing to live my life. I started having insomnia every time I check my email or inbox. It's a heart-stopping moment. Is it a new bill this time? Is anyone else borrowing money in my name? One night, I lay curled up in bed. Blue light from my phone bouncing off the ceiling. In the inbox is a letter from a hospital in Georgia. Title: Confirmation of Emergency Treatment. Brandon M. Insurance is in place. I opened it. The dossier clearly states my name, date of birth, social security number, and a medical record shows that I am, or rather someone impersonating me, was hospitalized due to a minor motorbike accident. The doctor prescribed pain medication, and the medical records were permanently linked to my health insurance. I stared at the screen, my fingers shaking. I don't drive a motorbike. I have never been to Georgia in my life. And now, if I have a real accident, the medical records will no longer be accurate. That's possible dangerous to life. I called the hospital the next day, verified my identity, and filed a complaint. They temporarily delete erroneous data, but warn, we can't prevent others from reusing that information if they have the right documents. I hung up, sitting motionless in the kitchen for over an hour. I started losing small parts of myself, not things, but things. Piece of identity. I no longer know who is standing under my name out there. And with each passing day, I find myself a little less me. One Friday afternoon, while passing by a familiar car repair shop in the neighborhood, I met Mr. Larry again, the man who had repaired my car since college. He looked at me, frowned and said, "Why have you been looking at me so quietly lately?" I was about to laugh it off, but I can't do it. I just said, "There are people out there living like you. And I don't know how to get myself back." Mr. Larry did not answer. He just nodded, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "But you're still here. Still walking, still breathing, and you can still fight." I never thought such a simple statement could have such weight. If you're listening this far, I want you to know this. Loss of identity is more than just loss of money. It's a loss of control. Is being pushed out of my own life. Don't think it only happens to innocent people. I was on guard. I'm careful. I am a sane person. But I still lost everything, in just a few minutes on the side of the road. If you have experienced something similar, please share below. I want to hear your story. And if you haven't, then remember, every piece of information you carry can be a weapon in the wrong hands. Protect yourself. Protect your identity. Believe in hunches. And never think, "It won't happen to me." Let's like, comment, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel to continue following my journey to finding myself. A story not just about being stolen, but journey to reclaim my name. At first, I still thought I had everything under control. I changed all my account passwords. I called the bank, filed an FTC report, placed fraud alerts at all 3 major credit bureaus. I froze all personal credit, bought identity protection software, and signed up for a 24/7 transaction monitoring service. I seemed to have created a new layer of armor around my life. But what I cannot shield, cannot stop, cannot be encoded, is worry. Because identity, once stolen, is not something you can just return. It's not like a phone number or a password. Identity is you, is a digital copy of everything you have done in this life. And now, that clone has been damaged. Dirty die. Not just because the robber once pulled a gun on me in the middle of the highway, but because his every subsequent action, every credit account opened, every debt he left behind, every medical data falsified. I lost the ability to register to rent a house. Every time my credit application is reviewed, I get rejected. Someone, not me, shopped at Home Depot, withdrew cash in Mississippi, and was hospitalized in Georgia. But it's all written above my name. One day, I went to the local bank, where I had done business for more than 6 years, to open a new savings account. The employee flipped the file over, then looked at me with confused and suspicious eyes. She said, "Sorry, But we can't accept your application with your current credit. I do not understand. I just froze my credit. She lowered her voice and tilted the screen towards me. On it shows a fraud warning. The account was linked to criminal activity in multiple states. I laughed, but it was a ragged laugh. I'm not angry with her. She just did her job. But I walked out of the bank with my self-esteem shredded into pieces. Every day that passes is a small knife to personal identity. I'm afraid of checking my mailbox. I dread seeing letters with the words, "Final Notice," or "Purchase Confirmation." All of these are things I did not do, did not sign, and did not know, but they kept coming, as if a parallel version of me, some stranger, was continuing to live and devastated my life. I gradually distanced myself from my friends. Every time someone asks, "How are you doing?" I feel choked. I don't know how to answer. I don't want to be someone who only tells negative stories. But we can't pretend everything is okay. I remember one time, I burst into tears, uncontrollably, when an old friend sent me a wedding invitation. On the envelope, my name was spelled wrong. Instead of Brandon Marcus, it said Brandon Marks. Just a typo. But I looked at that wrong name and broke down. Because in my heart, I was not sure who I am anymore. I used to be a very good organizer of my life. I have a plan, have stable finances, no debt, no illness. But now, I feel as if I'm living in a torn jacket. What used to be life is now just patchwork. Then one night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking into my eyes. I didn't recognize the person looking back. Dark eyes, gray skin, dry lips, greasy hair. I am no longer myself. I went back to the bedroom. On the table was a new envelope, from a medical center in Alabama. I don't open it. I just sat there, and thinking, is this how I disappear? Not by death, but by work be replaced. Someone is using my name. Someone is signing my name. Someone could harm someone else, and I would be the one called to court. I've almost accepted that perhaps this life can't be fixed anymore. But then, just when I was about to give up, I remembered something. The story about Jordan, my deceased brother. When I was a kid, he once told me about a time he almost drowned in a lake. When a friend teased him too much and pushed him into deep water. I asked him, "Did you scream?" He replied, "No, I just looked up at the water, saw the light, and kicked." I asked, "Why?" He laughed, "Because if you stop kicking, you'll sink. No one needs to push you down anymore." I looked back at myself in the mirror and started pedaling. If you have ever lost control of your life, not because of your fault, but because of someone else decided to destroy you, then you understand. Understand that sometimes there is no need to scream. Just pedal. Emerged, breathing. Once again, if my story touches you, please comment, share your thoughts. I don't want anyone to feel alone in feeling erased. And if you want to know what I did to start reclaiming my identity, please like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel. Because the sequel isn't just about suffering victims anymore. But it's time for me to counterattack. At some point, fear becomes a form of fatigue. I am no longer startled by debt letters. No longer be shocked when you discover another credit account has been opened in your name. No more tantrums when you see a medical bill with a forged, Brandon Marcus, signature. I have gone through all those stages. What remains is just one deep hole in my chest, where there once felt safe. I told my friends, my colleagues, and even the lawyer I hired with the last money in my savings fund. Everyone sympathizes, everyone has compassion, but no one know what to do other than dry procedures, declare, freeze credit, send complaints, wait for a response. But waiting in silence can kill a person. And I started thinking, if they don't find him, I will. I'm not a detective. I have never studied security. Nor do I know anything about digital tracking other than a few elementary concepts. But I do pain, and sometimes, persistent pain is the most enduring motivation. I started with what I had. Receipts from transactions I didn't make. I used the city names printed on them to track them down: Jackson, Tennessee, Tupelo, Mississippi, and a few other places along Interstate 40. I looked for each Craigslist post in those areas. Filter by electronics for sale, construction tools, household electrical appliances. Not because I knew exactly what I was looking for. It's me, wait for your intuition. And then one Tuesday night, almost 2 a.m., I saw it. A post in Jackson. DeWalt toolset, almost new. Drill, chainsaw, Grinder. Sold as a set. Unusually cheap price. Brief description. And the photo is strangely familiar. I turned over the bank email, checking for unauthorized transactions made with my card. One of them is the DeWalt toolkit, purchased at a Best Buy store in Memphis. I enlarged the photo. Can't go wrong. It is the kit was purchased in my name. I sat motionless in front of the screen for nearly 10 minutes. Part of me wanted to turn off the computer and forget everything. But another part, the part with nothing left to lose, whispers, "This is the only chance." I sent a message to the seller, appearing to be a potential buyer. "I'm interested in the toolkit. How about it?" He replied in less than an hour, "Yes. Maybe meet in the Walmart parking lot tomorrow afternoon. Bring cash." I printed out the photos, saved the entire exchange, and then called the Jackson Police Department. I don't expect much. At that time, I was so used to being rejected, ignored, and kicked back and forth between departments. But the strange thing is, they listen. Maybe because this time I have specific evidence. Maybe because I don't beg anymore, request cooperation. The officer on duty, Lieutenant Keller, promised to send someone to monitor the rendezvous point. "If you're right," he said, "this is the first step to something bigger." I didn't go to Walmart that day. I just sat at home, eyes glued to my phone as if I was monitoring my own life. And then, around 5 p.m., the phone rang. "Brandon?" Keller's voice. "That man came. When he saw us, he ran away, but in the end he lost control and crashed the car into a ditch. No one was injured, but..." He hesitated. He revealed who was behind it. I didn't have time to react. My eyes blurred. My ears rang. "We are conducting an investigation. But this could be an important link in a network specializing in stealing pedestrian identities. You are not the only victim. But you are the first person who dares to track them down." I can't sit still. I stood up and walked around the room, my chest tight. I don't know if this is relief, anger, or joy. Just know that after so many months of living like a shadow, I finally took a step towards the light. That night, I went to my parents' house, sitting in the middle of the living room, where I used to play games as a child. I told them everything, about Craigslist, about the police, about the phone call, about the feeling of being done again, for the first time in a long time. My mother cried, and my father, who served in the military, just squeezed my shoulder and said, "Not everyone can get back up after that. But you did. If you've heard this far, I hope you understand this. Identity theft is more than just losing your card. It's about losing confidence, the right to exist, and sometimes, even the meaning of life. But you can get up. You can investigate and find your own way. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the system will listen if you type hard enough. I'm not a hero. I'm just human, tired of being silent. If you have been a victim, or fear that one day you may become a victim, do comment below. Tell your story. I will read. And if you believe stories like these need to be heard, please do like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel. Because the sequel is Time True Justice Speaks. 3 weeks after the raid in Jackson, I received a phone call from Lieutenant Keller. This time his voice was not as tense as before. There was something relieved in every word he said, as if even he had just put a stone down. "We caught the other two," he announced. "Same gang as the guy you helped us track down." I said nothing. My heart beat fast, not because of fear, but because a familiar feeling was returning. Sensation, get back what was stolen. Keller said they followed the tool seller's testimony, collected images from cameras of stores involved in the transaction, and confirmed his true identity from falsified insurance records. After nearly a year of committing crimes on interstate roads in the southern United States, a group of 3 scammers, 2 of whom had criminal records, were finally caught. "And you're the reason we opened this case," Mr. Keller said. "If you hadn't been persistent, they might still be out there." I sat down in the chair, my palms wet. After so many months of living in darkness, there is light at last. Legal matters are not simple. I had to cooperate with lawyers, provide documents, testify, and deal with tons of paperwork to restore my identity. But this time, I did it all no longer in despair, but like someone who is cleaning up a messy house. Step by step, picking up the pieces, putting the old shape back together. I got my credit back after legal confirmation that I was the victim. Banks withdraw debt documents. Insurance deletes medical information that does not belong to me. I renewed my passport, my insurance card, my driver's license. Each piece of my identity was restored. Like reattaching myself. There are days when I still wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, as if someone is using my name somewhere again. But then I sat up, turned on the light, and reminded myself, everything is over. I gradually returned to work. Although I was initially nervous about signing any documents, I learned to cope. I learned how to use technology more safely. I am careful with personal data. Careful with every call, every text message, every smiling stranger on the street. I also started writing, not to make money, but to heal. Write about sleepless nights. Write about feeling replaced. Write about the moment I thought I disappeared from my own life. Write about the journey of getting up. Write for others to read and know they are not alone. A year after the incident, I received a letter from Keller, not an email, but a letter. In the letter, he thanked me for my persistence and said that thanks to the testimony, records, and information I provided, he added 5 other victims was also found and supported. Reading that line, I burst into tears, not because I'm a hero, but because me didn't give up. If you're still listening, I want you to remember something. Not everyone can prevent bad guys from appearing. Not everyone can resist a gun or a lax system, but you can choose how to react. You can give up, or you can tread water. Although weak, although slow, even if the whole world tells you there's no hope. But remember, as long as you don't sink, you remain. Identity is more than just a number. It's not just a signature or a security number. Identity is what you choose to do when everything has been taken away. I choose to stand up. And if I can do it, you can too. If you have been a victim of identity theft, or if you are worried about your personal information, please share your story in the comment section. I will read. Others will read it too. And maybe, in that way, we will no longer be alone. If you find this story meaningful to you, or to someone you love, please do click like, share, and subscribe to After 0 Hours channel. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We connect people who have walked through darkness. And if you are walking in the middle of the night, remember, tomorrow morning will still come. Just you pedal. Just don't stop breathing. Just believe that your name is still yours.